And welcome everyone to Metagov Seminar. Today we are super excited to have with us Ivan Pardo. Ivan is a labor organizer, software developer, and the founder of Solidarity Tech, an organizing platform used to successfully manage over 100,000 volunteers for the successful campaign of Zohran Mamdani for mayor of New York. As a New Yorker and Mamdani supporter, I'm very grateful for that. He got started building tools to support an effort he was part of in LA to organize rideshare drivers. And after some initial success there, other unions started adopting his tool. And then with funding from the Workers Lab, Solidarity Tech expanded and was able to be the tech engine behind the recent victory of Catherine Connolly as Ireland's president and Avi Lewis in his current bid to lead Canada's new Democratic Party. And so welcome, Ivan. Thank you so much for being here. And I will pass it to you to kind of start maybe telling us the story of how Solidarity Tech came to be.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and excited to talk with everybody. Yeah, so I guess uh, in 2017 or so, I found myself with some time to volunteer, and I'm an engineer and have done several kind of like tech activist tools before that point. And, for a number of reasons, had in my mind since the moment I took my first Uber ride in probably 2013, like wanting to see somebody organize drivers, wanting like just like really wanting this effort, some, driver organizing effort to take shape. And, I had done a lot of like exploratory work on that until August 2017. I just decided that I was going to go to the airport parking lot here in Los Angeles and at LAX and start talking with drivers about building a union. And so just started going to the airport parking lot and kept going back every day trying to build a committee of drivers. And the goal was never to build a CRM or build tech. It was to build a rideshare worker union, and it stayed that way for years. Like I kind of just committed myself to being a full-time volunteer to building the union, doing everything necessary to build the union. Initially, it was really building a committee of drivers and just finding uh, anybody who was a good candidate for that. And I'd never driven though, so I kind of just was like living in this world. Think like every moment of my life was dedicated to building a rideshare worker union. And, it wasn't until like a month in to that volunteer effort that there was a tech need that I couldn't really resolve with off-the-shelf tech. And so being an engineer, I'm like, okay, I think I can like resolve this with this quick little tool. So I built a little tool and went back to doing the organizing work. And then, a month or two later, another need came up. And so I built another little tool. And then fast forward a couple years, we started winning as Rideshare Drivers United. We passed a law in California called AB5 that gave drivers the rights of employees. And then some bigger unions started reaching out to see if they could use what we were using, but it was really just a suite of tools for organizing rideshare drivers. So at that point, I kind of just started thinking about turning it into a product. Like, what uh, can we generalize out of this that would be helpful for other sort of organizing campaigns? And I think that even though that wasn't on my mind when I got started. I think that part of what drew me to the industry, the rideshare industry, is how difficult it is to organize. The fact that, you know, hundreds of thousands of drivers in the state of California, we had no staff to begin with, and drivers are isolated, they don't have a common workspace. About 25% of drivers in the state of California are monolingual, not English speakers, so there's a whole lot of language differences. Uh, um, High turnover rate, like 97% annual turnover rate, so we're constantly having to develop new leaders. There's a lot of constraints with the rideshare industry that make it like a particularly difficult to organize industry. And so I think that there was kind of on my part a little bit of an like a hope that if we could figure out how what like the organizing model is for building this sort of a union, that there might be applications outside of organizing rideshare workers, but that was like has always been for the first 4 or 5 years, just really an after, just not really front of mind. It was just everything was just about building the union. And and then, we launched as Solidarity Tech less than 2 years ago, a little over a year and a half ago, almost 2 years. And and then we kind of started getting picked up pretty quickly. We got some unions picked it up, and then notably the Zohran campaign. I should stop. I don't know what kind of format we're doing here. Should I just keep talking, or do you want to ask questions, or?
Yeah, well, I send you the questions I want to get through, so I do want to make sure we can get through them in the time that we have. So, but yeah, I'm happy if you want to go through them, or I can jump in and kind of guide you through them. But I would love to hear about some of those features and why, like, what's unique about Solidarity Tech and its features and how they assist organizing and how that's different from maybe like you're saying, like I mean, even other Democratic campaign software, or yeah, what is that special kind of feature set?
Okay. So I think it's hard to even for me to even break it down as a list of features. I think it's just more of a overall approach. Um, and the all-in-one part is a big component. Like we don't want to have to sync 5 or 6 different tools in order to, cobble together a comprehensive organizing platform. The idea was kind of have everything in one place. My commitment to Rideshare Drivers United kind of up front was like, not up front, like where we ended up after a little bit of time. It was uh, everything in the tech stack outside of group chats and document storage would be handled within Solidarity Tech. So that's, all calling, texting, email, the website, um, events, donate dues, like everything needed to operate the union would be run through the product, other than these, the group chats and document storage, and maybe some other things, but those are the key ones. So I think that's kind of the first part of the approach that makes it different. I think um, that having everything in one place just gives you um, a much more comprehensive and clear picture of every individual, and you don't have data in silos, in spreadsheets or Google Forms that can't be connected to the rest of the organizing. So I think that's a big one. But I think like the other thing I'd say is that everything is kind of comes out of the rideshare organizing, and so much of the thinking of the product comes out of those constraints. So like the things I mentioned about 600,000 drivers in the state of California, no organizers to begin with, no full-time organizers to begin with. I was essentially a full-time volunteer. And what are the kind of from the beginning, we had to imagine what are the tools that we could build to put in the hands of workers to allow them to build their own union. And I think that those constraints led to an organizing model where we're always thinking about how can we build deep relationships with people at scale, with volunteers doing the work. And I think that that's kind of, that was kind of what we had to figure out with Rideshare Drivers United. And so much of the lessons of that campaign are just embedded in the DNA of the product. And then so what happened was, we launched this product. I did a demo for an organization, for a union, and somebody who was on a call, a demo that I did, would later, a few months later, end up becoming the field director for the Zohran campaign. And like all credit to her for like, I had no interest in electoral politics and political campaigns. And but she saw kind of the potential for how Solidarity Tech could be used for volunteer management on a political campaign. Like not at all my idea. Not like wasn't thinking about that at all, but she saw that. And before the campaign launched, the Zohran campaign launch, or right around the time that it was launching, I think a little bit before, she reached out and kind of like talked to me about her vision. You know, in a lot of ways, like she's amazing. She kind of like saw a year before it actually happened, kind of had like the vision for what ended up being like the successful Zohran Mamdani campaign field program kind of like mapped out. And then I think that then just to like give her more credit, I think that using a product like Solidarity Tech, which had never been used for like volunteer management. Not only did she see that application, she like took the risk with like, this big campaign, uh, trialing, testing, using this product that had never been used for this. I'm not sure why she took that risk, but like she did. And that's all the credit goes to her for like, you know, make like having that vision and reaching out and kind of like working with us uh to apply like to kind of make the product fit with the application of volunteer management on a political campaign. Um,
Yeah, I think to that point, like and sorry to interrupt, I listened to a couple of your interviews and read Micah's blog about you, and just yeah, I guess I was struck by kind of the approach that is way more oriented towards relationships, and I want you to yeah speak to like I mean some of the features of the platform, right, are like a CRM, calling, texting, email, website, events, field app, reporting, automations, and donations all in one place, as you said. But I think some interesting things, at least I picked up on, are kind of around like, yes, it allows for texting, but it's not like mass texting, show up at this event, right? Like some other apps or platforms might be more oriented towards. This is about, yeah, how do you kind of like match people, or maybe here you can speak to we can jump ahead to like the influence map and some of those like relational features. A lot of people here are interested in relational features, and it's a socio-technical thing. It's not just like the technical feature, but what is it about maybe getting people on the phone and door knocking? Like, what are some of those relational socio-technical features that you think Solidarity Tech does a good job of cultivating?
yeah, yeah. So I think you have to do both. So we do broadcast texting too, but you think you have to do both. You have to kind of do the one-to-one stuff for personal relationship building, but then, if we have an action or a protest like we did for Russia Rising Night last week, like there is a place for broadcast texting too. But I think that having a personal relationship with somebody at the organization, who you've had some calls with, who you've maybe met in person or at a meeting, like makes the broadcast text that come from that same number like it gives them more weight. So I think that you have to do both because with Right Drivers United we started with no list. It's both a list building effort and a way to like cultivate the list that you do have. So it's kind of in like the union organizing. It's kind of like it can be used for external organizing and internal organizing. External organizing, bringing in new members, building a new union. Internal organizing, strengthening your internal union, or your union internally. Yeah, I think you have to do both. So I think like for the relational stuff, something like, well, I guess the first thing I'll say about that before doing the influence map stuff is I think a critical workflow for Rideshare Drivers United that we kind of like figured out when we were initially building the union is like the scheduled call workflow where think about the rideshare industry has all these drivers who are not, really in their car, and you'll be surprised when you'll meet a driver every now and then that they'll tell you that they have been working in the industry for a year and a half and have never had a conversation with another driver. And then so I think that's like a barrier that we needed that we like as we're building the list, we have to find a way to break that barrier and get a driver who is like a promising organizer on the phone with a new organizer who's had no contact with the organization yet, but has signed up with us and wants to be a part of it. So we have like part of the work, the flow that, kind of combines the list building with the one-to-one relationship is that somebody signs up for Rideshare Drivers United, let's say either on a homepage at driversunited.org, or we've also got a bunch of different tools that are built on top of Solidarity Tech, like our arbitration opt-out tools. So anytime Uber and Lyft send a terms of service update, drivers have 30 days to opt out of binding arbitration. So we built this tool early on and now it's kind of a part of Solidarity Tech. You can build, we have pages like this, where we have, a form. Take the Lyft one, for example. We have a form that allows drivers to input all the info that we need in order to generate a PDF to send to Lyft's legal counsel to opt them out of binding arbitration so that they retain the right to participate in a class action lawsuit or whatever to sue the company outside of arbitration. So we built these tools to allow drivers to opt out of arbitration. So we're providing the service, but at the same time, it's an intake form and gets people into the system. So we did this early on by basically just a list. Like I was talking to a shitload of drivers all day, and like that was one of the things that would happen. Whereas like Uber would update a new terms of service, I'd see the messages come in that people would be saying like, "Hey, I just got this." I just got this, and it says screenshot. What do we do? What do we do? And it's just kind of like by being embedded in the organization, we see what people want. So we kind of built this tool, and that was like a really important way of really early on before we had like even launched or made a name for ourselves of just getting new drivers into the system because then drivers would share that with their friends. They'd post it on the forums and Reddit or whatever, or, and that would kind of get people into the system. So regardless of whether somebody comes in from signing up on our forum, from signing a petition, from one of the opt-out pages, we are going to then redirect them to another form where we're going to ask them a bunch of industry specific questions. What services do you work for? Are you part-time, full-time, occasional driver, et cetera? And then after that, we're going to redirect them to a page where they can schedule a call with an organizer. And this is like one of the 15 or so campaign focused page types in Solidarity Tech. But this one in particular, what we're going to do is a new driver arrives on that schedule a call page. We're going to offer them the pool of times where all of our volunteer driver organizers who have undergone like a basic training on how to have an organizing conversation with the new worker. At the end of that training, they set their availability to when they can take these calls with a new driver. And then new driver arrives on the schedule a call page. They pick a time, they offer the pool of times, pick a time. It's assigned to an available driver in their area. The tech does all the matching necessary and all the reminders to get everybody on the phone through the app. Then the driver's done the basic training on how to have these calls. They will call the new worker. We have a whole process for how that call should go. They make an assessment. We try to understand the things that they want to change in the industry. We try to get them to an orientation. All of this integrated into the product, like the whole event management system, the assessments. All of this is kind of like within the tool. There's no need for using a spreadsheet or anything. And then, we want to get them on every driver who comes in the system to schedule a call with an organizer and then get them ideally into an orientation or an in-person meeting where they can meet other drivers and kind of meet more experienced organizers and kind of like go from there. So, so and then on those scheduled calls, we'd make yourself your agent, and that's kind of you could potentially make yourself if you had a good call with somebody their agent, and that's kind of would kind of be the beginning of hopefully the relationship with one individual organizer who at Registered Drivers United, a driver organizer who is uh, committed to building the union and developing their own set of leaders, right? So the idea is kind of like we try to develop leaders, driver leaders who are going to then be developing their own leaders and kind of like that, that sort of idea is the only way that we imagine that we could build this sort of union with no staff. And so kind of like yeah, that was really early on, like really important to the way that the product was imagined. So stuff like the influence map thing is a little newer, but really critical for doing deep organizing at scale. So anytime you send a text or an email from Solidarity Tech, uh, we're going to append a referral code onto that URL. And then, if you then end up sharing it with somebody, we'll kind of know, like, kind of be building the influence map, understanding who's bringing who into the union. And then we'll, like, there's all kinds of, you'll be sent if one of your friends signs up, you'll be sent an email that says, hey, your friend John signed up. Great job. Here's a link again so you can keep sharing. And then, and then our organizers are able to then kind of see, all right, who has been bringing in people lately on what page, via what methods, and then that is part of how we're able to do this organizing at scale. So just like at the end of last year, there was a driver in the Bay Area who kind of surfaced as an organic leader because we saw he had recruited maybe 20 or so other, I think they're all like a Turkish speaking, like he had kind of recruited a bunch of other drivers in his network. And like that, we noticed that because of this sort of tool, this like sort of like this influence mapping tool. And so then we called them, we kind of prioritized building a relationship with them. This is an organic leader who is already doing the work without even knowing us. So we started to build a relationship with them. And now I like look at the influence, like he's probably over 100 people that he's brought in, but kind of, and he's an organizing committee member. So that tool allowed us to, he was going to probably be continuing for the short term to be inviting his friends and all of that, but by hearing from one of our organizers, starting to build a relationship with them, we kind of are able to offer more guidance, offer encouragement. Like it's great. Like we appreciate all of the work that he's putting in, and then develop his leadership too, um and so yeah, so I think that influence mapping thing, I find it more useful for as a starting point for identifying who should we be investing our time in to like develop organic leaders who probably already have that ability, but that if with a little bit of encouragement and guidance can be even better.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it kind of answers those questions around like I had about social capacity building and how the technology just kind of facilitates like training of organizers almost, like developing relationships and leadership development and like influence map kind of allowing that to extend and be recognized. And yeah, I think that's really, really unique and cool to hear about. Especially just, I mean, we're all thinking about the AI age and kind of the automation away of like a lot of capacity, social capacity. And so I think it's super important that a tool be designed in a way that fosters human capacity. But I want to bring us to another topic that's popping up in the chat around kind of obviously being a one solution for all things or unified system, kind of some of the risks associated with that, things about privacy and security. What are some of the, yeah, like ways that your like platform's governance has been designed and developed? How do you think about consent? How do you think about, yeah, does it leverage decentralized infrastructure at all? I know it's not open source, some of the pros and cons of that choice, perhaps. And then you did mention that, it's an API that allows it to be interoperable with other tools and that other tools have been built on top of it. How do you think about how Solidarity Tech kind of works to avoid some of the pitfalls of a lot of our technology stack these days being like proprietary vendor lock-in surveillance type machines?
Yeah. Okay. So let me just try and touch on all those things. So, I mean,
Cool.
just with the last one, we have full API. All the data can, your data can be exported via the API or imported. And, so we also have replicas for like the enterprise clients that need it. I think another thing is that the product we have no long-term contracts. To me, that's even bigger because like the amount of people that I end up talking with who are like locked into a contract, they want to like change, but they're like, hey, I'm in this contract for the next 6 months. Like it bugs me that, organizations are locked into using a tool not because it's the best tool out there, but because they were forced to sign a contract. So yeah, no long-term contracts. You can upgrade, downgrade, cancel at will. Um, and then yeah, all the data can go in or out. And I think that we we have there's been there's a lot of tools that end up getting built on top of Solidarity Tech for a campaign, for a large scale campaign that has like technical capacity. Like they'll use the API or the read replica to build like dashboards or even like just tools, other tools that we don't offer in the product. And that's great, and I love that, and kind of generally encourage people to do that. I think that every now and then there's like a tool, like something that came out of the Zohran campaign, for instance, that a volunteer, Ben, did an amazing job building this tool for the campaign called Host Tools Kit, which was kind of like a set of tools for people leading canvassing leads, leading canvassing shifts. And so that was something that the campaign built on top of the tool, on top of Solidarity Tech. And then after the election, we started hearing from other campaigns that had used Solidarity Tech for had used Solidarity Tech on the Zoran campaign, and they were like, "Hey, this happened probably 5 times." Or somebody's like, "Hey, like, um, how can we use the host tools kit that we used on the Zoran campaign?" And it's like, well, that wasn't a part of Solidarity Tech, so we built it. So we kind of like ended up building our own version of it on top of the tool because of, just like the demand that we were hearing. So yeah, I think like generally that's been a kind of process that we've followed where you can build whatever you want on top of it. But if something just is really commonly desired across our existing clients, then we'll build a our own version of it into the product. I think in terms of like about open source stuff, well, first let me you know step back even more about like when I started doing Rideshare Drivers United, a register just needed something to register for a Stripe account, needed an entity. So I registered as a not-for-profit because I wasn't thinking about building a tech, anything, tech product, tech company. So but registered as a not-for-profit kind of to, as a placeholder so we could get a Stripe account so we could start accepting dues or whatever. And then when Rideshare Drivers United started having some success, I along with my co-founder, started to try and fundraise for Rideshare Drivers United from foundations, and I think at the same time, I was also trying to fundraise for Solidarity Tech, and or at least kind of put feelers out there and see how promising I thought it would be, or how difficult it would be to raise capital as a with this structure, and basically couldn't get any money for Solidarity Tech. Like just I felt run into a bunch of foundations. And I should say this is probably 2019 that liked what we were doing, but just don't invest in organizing tech, and they're invested in kind of you know um, work-based building organizations, but not tech. And so I just felt, and then also try to get money from unions, and essentially like just hitting my head against the wall, not working. Um, just decide, okay, this isn't like I don't have the patience for this. I'd done other like activist like tech product before, got a product called Boycott, which is like a way to boycott bad shit, and I'd done that as a um, for profit and kind of raised money on it and raised money for it, and never felt any sort of like because it was all like aligned investors, it was all great. Like there was no pressure to do anything I didn't want to do. So I knew that that if it was a not-for-profit or a for-profit, I would be able to still run it the way I needed it to. I wanted to run it. So after not being able to get money as a not-for-profit, changed it to a for-profit. Um, got a little bit of money. Well, probably more importantly, I think it's at the time got a little bit of money, but I think now I'm grateful that we are a for-profit, even though we have raised very little money, and it was just kind of the grant that the money that we did get was a from the Workers Lab was a grant. So we might have been able to get that as a not-for-profit anyway. But where we're at right now, like if we're gonna raise capital, like yeah, I'm glad that it's a for-profit because otherwise it wouldn't I'd be in a tougher position trying to raise money for nonprofit because we need more money now than we needed then. Um, and so yeah, and like the so I think that I kind of had tried the not-for-profit route and just didn't. What we're trying to do here is like already very difficult, I feel like, to build like an all-in-one or CRM for organizers and just like several years ago when I kind of wound up with the for-profit route, I kind of was just like, like it's already and considering every model like before that, like I just kind of was like, I just want to build this product. I want to focus on the tools, not an alternative like model that's going to make it even more difficult. And same thing when we've kind of considered like open sourcing things or business open source license or core open model, all the different models, and we've considered them all. Um, and just kind of punted because don't need the complexity, like it's kind of like we're tiny. We're tiny and don't have any moment. I'm personally like working 90 plus hours every week, extremely, you know, time limited, and anything that gets in the way of building like the product that we want to build is kind of just not something that we can deal with right now. And all this stuff will probably reevaluate at some point, but like for the time being, just gotta keep on the track we're on.
We appreciate that openness and we trust you. And so that is a key component of this is trust. And yeah, I think this is something that a lot of us in this organization think a lot about are like these governance questions and trade-offs. And yeah, in the comments, people already being like a purpose trust. There are creative options for governance out there. And Liz, yeah, your comment on institutional design for the next generation of democratic infrastructure is a hot topic. But yeah, I mean, we trust you and appreciate again like that openness and kind of willingness to be critical about these governance decisions and trade-offs that you're making. So, um, yeah, Liz, you came off from off camera to on. Curious if you wanted to give voice to any thoughts, questions, concerns.
I just want to appreciate Ivan for this journey that he has accepted. There was nothing there, and he saw people struggling, and he really engaged. So I'm just really moved by Ivan here.
Yeah, and I
Um,
also want to give you the opportunity, Liz, to talk about interop because that was a question, or we did mention interoperability, but that was something that Ivan touched on, that how many different types of tools have been built, and you're cultivating a cohort of interoperable democratic tools. So want to just give you the floor to talk maybe a bit about what you're seeing there.
well, look, this is something it would in the future, it'd be great to have conversations about Ivan. There's a thriving community of folks working on tools to allow people to make sense together, to figure out what they want to take action on. And there's a research area called interoperable deliberative tools here. I also want to shout out Metagov's funding partners, beloved collaborators, and friends from one project who are here right now. I see Sasha, Zaana, Eliana. So I just want to appreciate you all for being here. Um, but rather than take us into um, that in specific, I would just say, Ivan, I heard you might have to go at the quarter hour. So maybe could you share anything that you were surprised that you had to learn along the way, or maybe things you think that other people who want to make this kind of a difference in the world might not be tuned in to seeing in the way that you see?
I think that when I decided in 2017 to just commit myself full time to organizing a rideshare driver union, I thought it would probably be um, a month, and then I would scratch the itch, realize it's too difficult, and give up. But just kind of felt right. Everything just felt, I was just trusting my gut and everything felt really good. And then I started meeting, trying to find mentors because I had no experience as a labor organizer, just trying to find people who could guide me. And, I met a lot of great people, but it was really critically when I met Nicole, my co-founder. Nicole Moore is the president of Rideshare Drivers United in December 2008, 2017. And she is a part-time Lyft driver and a lifelong organizer and an amazing organizer, like the best organizer I know. And and I remember, and when I met her, there was a certain point, it wasn't on the first or the second meeting, but there was a certain point where I just felt like I want this union has to exist, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to build it. And like at that moment, I was like, she knows how to be an organizer. I will, but she has all kinds of, like, I was the one who was a full-time volunteer at the time. It was basically like, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it was kind of like she, I was totally happy with her being the brain and I'd be the body, and I'm just gonna do what you tell me to do, and just like do, yeah, and kind of like, and that was kind of the relationship for a long time. And I would kind of like be spending my time like finding good drivers, building relationship with drivers. And then she knew how to put it, like we would put an agenda for a meeting together, but she knew how to run the meeting and how to kind of like big picture and how to like, identify leaders better than me. So we would just talk through everything. And I just like had to trust her judgment. I think that there's like like an ego thing, I think, where I just had to just be like, she knows better than me. Like, what if I, like, who am I? Who am I to, like, I don't know shit about labor organizing. But like over a long time of doing that, like, I got pretty good. And I do know a thing or two now about union organizing. And yeah, so but if I feel like if I hadn't like just like embedded myself in this movement, and then found mentors that I could just like, just fully trust. Um, I like the tech stuff wouldn't have come about.
Yeah, that's a really powerful statement about the kind of interdisciplinary and very human collaborations that lead to socio-technical systems that get impacts that change history. In respect of your time, let me say, so I'm also in Los Angeles. I don't know, maybe you're here sometimes. My friends in the UCLA Union are now using your tech. And we have a computer club that meets in Chinatown that we would love to have you come out and hang out with us. We're doing weird stuff all the time.
I'm down later. In the spring sometime. I need until the end of March, but I'm down. And
Great.
yeah, is it at the public school space? I'm curious.
It's at the Plot Space, run by a creative technologist artist of Chinese heritage. Plot in Chinatown. Yeah, every other Tuesday night at 7.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm in Hollywood, but not that far.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm in East Hollywood.
same.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you so much, Ivan. And I know, unfortunately, you have another call to get to, so we promised that we would let you escape us early. But we did have some questions come up in the chat. I see like Steve's hand up, and then when there were two interesting questions that came up around like capabilities of the tool around like collective decision making and relationship management that I would love, maybe Ivan, if not now, I can email you them
No, we can do
later.
it now. I think I should leave in like 5 minutes, but I think I'm down to whatever. Got it.
Cool. Yay, thanks. Yeah, Sasha had asked a question a little up here in the chat around like collective decision making capacity within the tool. And then Anne asked one about relationship management and kind of the edges of conflict or things like this. So curious about some of those capabilities.
Okay, so I think the second little tool, like there was an immediate need a month into organizing work, like a texting thing, and built that. The second like tool that got built in what would become Solidarity Tech later was like something that came up when we would have meetings. I'd noticed that we'd have, sometimes we'd have a meeting and 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 what would happen is, a lot of like I said, drivers are kind of coming to this meeting, maybe have not spoken with another driver before, or have very limited contact with other drivers. So what happens is people just end up talking shop. Like they're talking, oh, I had this passenger who did this, or check out this like rip off ride I had last week, or like, yeah, just different people just kind of start talking about different things. And it was sometimes kind of I don't want to say derailing the meeting, but it kind of like getting us a little bit off track. And so we kind of like did a bunch of survey tools. And the survey tools are like really integrated into organizing. And so there's ways of measuring like demands, both in the terms of like voting, whether you support a demand, let's say a commission cap on rides, right? A 15% commission cap on rides. Well, whether you support a demand from I don't support this to I strongly support this, kind of like a 1 to 5 thing, and then also ranked choice voting on all of the issues. Some because oftentimes what people do is they would say I strongly support every demand. So, but we needed to kind of see the nuance between those to understand like which ones are really more important. So we asked them to rank choice them, like to rank them, and sort of that combination of surveying tools that are we built in the product were used to like synthesize hundreds of thousands of votes from drivers came in at a certain point, and we use that to synthesize what we called the Rideshare Drivers Bill of Rights, which is still on drivers-united.org. You can see that, and then that kind of became our North Star. So now, anytime like a meeting seemed to like kind of get into a sort of what are we fighting for here or whatever, like the answer was always clear. It's like, hey, like thousands of drivers voted on what they want to change about the industry. That's our North Star. It's Drivers Bill of Rights. You can see it here on our website. And that kind of, because there's a whole lot of, sometimes people will be like, well, I like complain about a passenger that brings a dog into the car or something like things that like are not really high priority for the vast majority of people. And so in that case, what in order to prevent the meeting from going sideways, we're just like, hey, like the Rideshare Drivers Bill of Rights, like that's our democratic will of this organization is reflected in that, and that's what we're fighting for. So let's try and move on, right? Yeah, and I guess what was the other part?
Relational management, conflict.
Okay, yeah, I think it's like I that's the hard part. Like I think that's one of the things that I don't miss about like all of the about being like spending all my time doing the rideshare driver organizing. There's like just dealing with conflicts that um I I think that is like it's critical that everybody's on the same page. I think that we had like oftentimes like there were people early on that are like they wanted like you actually they didn't want to build a union, maybe what they wanted was a driver co-op or something, and people just if somebody and for there's a number of reasons that we kind of like decided that that's not what we're doing, really just because we don't have the capital for it, but there was just kind of like having clarity about what we are and what we're not is it was important. And then um the conflict stuff was really at the last 5 years been handled by people who aren't me. And the way that the system, in terms of how tech can manage that, we've got like this agent system essentially. Like the moment that you have a good call with somebody, or you just decide, or you meet somebody at an in-person meeting, and you decide this is somebody who's a relationship who I want to own this relationship on behalf of the organization. Um, you set that in the app, all calls and texts from that person to the organizational number are going to be routed to your phone so you can, pick up the call or answer the email. So there's like kind of a way of attaching yourself to an individual that you want to develop a relationship with. Um, and then yeah, like the conflict stuff uh is I don't know if I have any good answer to that.
I'll plug the Small Hassles Court. We recently had a team build this really adorable, and I just say adorable because it just lightens up conflict. But they presented a few weeks ago this room for conflict mediation, where two people can go in and kind of soften and ease and deliberate around an interpersonal conflict. Maybe one day we can talk about integrating that into Solidarity Tech. It's super cute. There's this dragon that kind of helps be the mediator. But anyways, do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Cool. Steve, your hand's been up. I see you typed it, but feel
Yeah,
free to
yeah,
go
you
into
lost
it.
it. Basically, I'm wondering, you've got all these people that are in the organization. How do they coordinate live activities? So, do you have any type of group activity scheduler that can sort of look at people's calendars and figure out the optimal time that works for the most people, etc.?
I mean, we have an organizing committee meeting every Wednesday night at 7, and we have since 2008, end of 2018. So I think so, and this is just for the leaders, right? Leaders, and then we'll have and that we do that on Wednesday at 7 because that is slow time for drivers. It's really Tuesday nights or Wednesday nights are the slowest demand times. So that was just a process of, having a lot of individual relationships and kind of sorting and we didn't do polling or anything to arrive at that time. That was kind of just like
Okay, so
talking.
there's no dynamic scheduling at all, or members scheduling things amongst themselves, or subgroups like, they want to go out and do some sort of rally or something like that and figure out when to do it. No scheduling tools like that.
Not really. Not really. There's like the scheduled call stuff is there and people adopt it, kind of like tweak it for other things. But there's also like tools like if you're running a GOTV campaign to be able and you're trying to get people to commit to certain shifts, you can kind of like check to see what shifts they've already committed to and what their window of availability is. There's some things for scheduling, but not
Okay.
for like ad
Okay,
hoc
but
kind
I
of
mean, I
administration.
have a solution for that if you're interested. If you wanted to have members do that type of coordination ever, just contact me. Okay, thanks.
Nice. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I responded to your comment. Let's build it, but you're already on it. All right. And then there's a question here on, I think Yanis and Will had similar questions about how Solidarity Tech might be like continued to be used in New York. And so curious if there, and Will even says, is there potential to shift to a public commons funding mechanism similar to Decidem? If you know about that project in Spain.
I don't know I'm not familiar with that. I mean, I think that I would say so. Our Time, the successor to the Zohran campaign, continues to use Solidarity Tech. So does, I think, every New York City DSA campaign for this year, maybe like 10 of
Wow.
them. So does like a ton of tenant unions in the city and here in LA tenant unions, tons of tenant unions are using Solidarity Tech. New York State tenant block, like there's a lot of like organizations that are continuing to doing the base building work behind the scenes that are continuing to use Solidarity Tech. I think that those are like I'm more drawn to the behind the scenes work. Like I never do things like this, like meetings where I talk about myself because I think like I like doing the behind the scenes work. And there's a lot of stuff happening, there's a lot of stuff that other orgs are doing behind the scenes with Solidarity Tech that I hope will bear fruit and lead to, improving things for working people in America. And yeah, but it's happening. It's just kind of we're not promoting it.
Yeah, cool. Well, if anyone else is in New York, we do have a big Metagov contingency in New York that is going to be we do co-working sessions and we're going to be gathering to talk about these types of things and the future of like participatory budgeting in New York. But we also have folks in lots of cities around the world. So join the Metagov community and get plugged into other folks thinking about these things in your local community. But yeah, that is all the time we have today. So I'm closing us out here. If everyone can do what we always do, which is unmute and give our speaker a big round of applause. Let's do that. Come off mute and be so loud that the Zoom
Hey, thank
noise
you.
thing overcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. And this is fun.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a great rest of your day. If you've got questions about Metagov, let me know, but enjoy and see you soon. See you next week.